Welcome back with Level Up Games. Ram here, interviewing tonight's FNM winner, Richard Alford. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Good to hear. And what deck did you crush the competition with tonight?
Grixis Shadow.
A good returning face I see ever since the days of Lares. Glad you're able to bust it out here and get some good wins. Let's talk about the matches a little bit. What was one of the easier matches of tonight?
So my easier match was probably Scam. I don't know if it's normally going to be as, I don't want to say easy, but as together as it normally would be with the matches that I played today. Basically, since they didn't have an aggressive turn one Scam, they were kind of playing a fairer game, but Grixis Shadow does play a more holistic, threat-intensive mid-game than Scam tends to, if they're not evoking out their elementals in the early game. So the longer the game went on, the more things were pulled in my favor off of that. So, yeah.
That makes sense, especially given some of the pieces Scam uses to deal with threats are like lightning bolts, for example. Like that doesn't trade well into the threats Shadow would usually run, which I imagine is like Shadow Course proper, and like Ledger Shredders probably be the other one that usually can outgrow a lightning bolts.
I'm actually off Shredder.
Oh, that makes sense.
And Ragavan, too.
So is it just Shadow and what's the other?
Shadow, DRC, and Orcish Bowmasters.
I would say Bolt does not trade well into Bowmasters as well as you probably like it to. But regardless, it sounds like just two interactive decks just playing back and forth Magic, and one deck's just going to pull out ahead of the other. And it was you tonight.
Yeah.
Good to hear about that. And then how about what was one of the tougher matchups of tonight?
So I played against Dimir control deck is what I'd call it. I'm still not too familiar with the main board of what Dimir ring decks tend to look like. But I think that what I played against was basically that, maybe with some tweaks and adjustments. The game two that we played, because I was at exactly one with how things had panned out over the game, they were able to Bowmasters me. But the next game, thanks to Underworld Breach, with the two copies that I'm running, I was just really able to pull ahead by slamming that, casting 5 baubles in a Bowmaster, drawing a bunch of cards. Game 3, I had probably less than 10 cards left in my library by the time Game 3 was done. So that was a pretty wild game where, I had to take a lot of actions to get there. Didn't really play optimally with the breach lines, with delving and setting up for later turns. I'm still getting used to it. So
I would say at least it didn't stop you from getting the victories. Nice to hear the spicy addition of Breach to the Shadow Sister still showing up and doing well as expected. I know that was a cool addition when some of the like streamer builds were running around, just seeing that and like the explosive power of what Breach can do for a grindy deck like Shadow, for example. And then I know we talked before about some of your thoughts on things that should get banned and unbanned leading up to the announcement. Now that we have had the announcement drop and a little bit of time after to peel out the cards that got unbanned, namely Preordained for Modern, I just wanted to hear some of your thoughts on it. Are you happy, disappointed with what they decided to do? How have you felt about Preordained?
Yeah. So when I first saw the announcement, me along with other people were very much like, why are there not more cards that are unbanned on here? I do think that introducing one new card to the format can be an interesting space to see how that one card breathes amongst what was already existing there, rather than maybe unbanning 2 or 3 cards and that all kind of conflicting against each other and maybe harder to define like what the metagame is even shaping out to be for a longer period of time. And it's funny. I didn't plan to play a preordained deck. I just decided, I'm going to get back into Grixis Shadow in Modern, and then within 30 days Preordained was unbanned, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad that I decided that I wanted to start doing that. And I talked before about like how I felt with what's currently on the ban list, and basically there are some cards that I could see coming off. But the thing with the cards that could come off is I don't know how much it would benefit Modern by coming off. It's to say that they could come off, but I don't really know what adding Blazing Shoal to the format would add, for example. As far as interesting, fun, positive deck building and play patterns, I don't know what Lattice would offer on that. If you look at the ban list, you noticed a bunch of cards like that. It's like they could come off, but I mean, is it helping anyone? Is anyone going to have a good time with that, or should nobody be losing sleep over it? So, just Preordained being unbanned, I think, is fine for right now. I think in the coming months or years, we'll see more come off, especially with Modern Horizons 3 on the horizon.
No, makes sense.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that take. It probably makes sense, I guess, from Wizards' point of view, to just like try one unban instead of letting loose a bunch of things and creating a hot mess that they then have to fix after just unbanning a bunch of stuff. And Preordained seems like well positioned. I like how it's making these like decks like Shadow and Murktide pop up a little more, especially because the synergies with Delirium for like Unholy Heat and DRC, which I know that's those type of decks started to take a backseat, especially once Lord of the Rings dropped. So it's nice to see those decks kind of get a little additional tool to work with, something that's as innocuous as just a little early game setup from a spell that's attached to a sorcery of all things.
Yeah.
But interesting thoughts all around, and thank you again for the time, and congratulations once more getting the victories. Have a good night.
Thanks.